My family spent a lifetime celebrating my sister's potential and dismissing mine, until I became the secret owner of her entire life. So the investor phoned me directly, my sister Serena said, swirling her champagne. She thinks my creative direction is the only reason he's making this deal. My parents' faces glowed with pride. I watched the clock. 3, 2, 1. My phone screamed on the table, a harsh, digital sound that shattered the calm of our holiday meal. Rowan, silence that thing, my father demanded. I didn't. I tapped the screen and switched on speakerphone. Transaction finalized, a voice declared. 72.3 million deposited to Azure Branding. The room turned to ice. I didn't look up from my salad. Perfect, I said, voice steady. Initiate the buyout clause now and terminate the VP for severe professional misconduct by end of day. I ended the call. Then, finally, I met my sister's gaze. Before I explain how I acquired Serena's firm just to let her go, leave a comment telling me where you're joining from. Ever felt like a ghost in your own home? I want to hear it. Growing up in Crestwood was like existing inside a museum display. Everything was curated, costly, and delicate. My parents, Richard and Clara, viewed life as a theatrical production, and my sister, Serena, was their leading lady. She was vibrant, photogenic, and crafted for their narrative. I was reserved, thoughtful, obsessed with systems, data, the hidden frameworks beneath the surface. They couldn't place me, so they ignored me. I became the silent echo in their pristine halls. Their dismissal wasn't casual, it was foundational. The moment it crystallized for me, I was 13. I'd just won the National Mathematics Olympiad. A real medal, not a token, competing against thousands. I walked home with that weight in my bag, my chest tight with a naive, aching hope. When I entered, the house was already buzzing, but not for me. Serena, 16, had been chosen as a finalist for the Regional Future Leaders Showcase. Look at her, my mother cried, straightening a ribbon on Serena that probably cost more than my entire computer. A vision we must celebrate. Mom, I said, holding up the medal. I won nationals. She glanced at it, then back at Serena's sash. That's lovely, Rowan. Take it upstairs. We're going to the club to honor your sister. Change out of that sweatshirt, please. That evening, while they toasted Serena's achievement with gourmet food and laughter, I sat in my room with a bowl of cereal. I looked at the medal, shining under my lamp, then at the crowded shelf in the living room, filled with Serena's most improved certificates and participation trophies. There was no space for my first-place finish. I didn't have the language for it then. In psychology, it's often called the scapegoat and the idol. Unhealthy family systems are like poorly balanced equations. They require a counterweight. My parents were deeply uncertain people, petrified of being ordinary. They needed an idol to reflect their dreams of excellence. That was Serena. But an idol needs a contrast. They required a scapegoat to hold their insecurities, their frustrations. That was me. I wasn't merely overlooked. I was essential. My supposed failures were the foundation for Serena's narrative. If I succeeded, it destabilized their entire reality. If the scapegoat is actually capable, then the idol might be common. A truth my parents' world couldn't sustain. They constructed a universe where my wins were irrelevant and Serena's minor efforts were monumental. That night, the crying stopped. The pleading stopped. I understood that if I wanted to create anything of substance, I'd have to build it alone in the shadows, where they couldn't see it to diminish it. I stored the math medal in a box under my bed, shut the lid, and opened my first manual on machine learning. I didn't know it then, but I just poured the first foundation stone for an enterprise they'd never sense until it was complete. I left at 18, not with drama, but with a duffel bag. Serena went to an Ivy League school, funded entirely, complete with a penthouse suite and a stipend that matched a CEO's bonus. I rented a studio above a laundromat that smelled of detergent and dust. They didn't offer support. I didn't request it. I possessed something more valuable, solitude. While Serena was socializing at networking events and sliding into roles secured by my father's connections, I was constructing Core Node. It began on a computer I assembled from salvaged parts. I didn't aim to make trendy apps. I wanted to engineer the backbone, the invisible, essential data architecture that powers modern commerce. I spent years staring at code until my vision blurred. I survived on coffee and quiet resolve. Secrecy became my doctrine. I never mentioned the first major contract with an international freight company. I never mentioned hiring my first team member, a genius named Leo who worked for stock because I couldn't pay salaries yet. I never mentioned moving from the studio to a real workspace downtown. To my family, I was just Rowan, the tech helper. They assumed I did basic IT troubleshooting. I allowed the misconception. It was protective. My Aunt Alina was the sole exception. My mother's sister, the observer at gatherings who never boasted. One afternoon, she visited my cramped space with a check for $30,000. "It's not a gift," she said, eyeing my server stack humming in the corner. "It's a strategic stake. I see your project, Rowan. Your mother can't know." She became my silent guide. The only person who understood the scapegoat was, in fact, a gathering storm. Years flowed. Core Node evolved from a concept into a powerhouse. We managed international data flows, secured networks for blue-chip corporations. I purchased a loft under a corporate name but kept my modest clothes. I accumulated capital not for luxury, but as armor. Each dollar was another layer between me and their world. Meanwhile, Serena graduated and was handed a director position at Azure Branding, a firm my parents had heavily backed. She posted images of her executive suite, her power lunches. She didn't comprehend profit and loss statements. She only understood the aesthetics of achievement. I observed from the periphery, my domain expanding silently beneath their glittering pond. I was the unseen force, they were skimming the surface. Flash to last spring. I was 30. Core Node was valued at over $400 million. I just finalized a partnership with a manufacturing giant in Berlin. Yet on Sunday, I was at my parents' dining table in Crestwood, pushing around green beans while Serena explained why my coat was all wrong. "You have good features, Rowan," she said, voice layered with that brand of localized sympathy she'd mastered. "But you present yourself like a temp worker. Honestly, Azure is starting an image consultancy. I could get you a friends and family rate. We could upgrade you." "Yeah, Rowan," my dad added, topping off his scotch. "Listen to your sister. She understands presentation. You're still doing that computer troubleshooting, right? What is it, fixing printers?" "It's systems architecture, Dad," I replied, my tone strained. "Foundational networks." Sure, printers," he dismissed, turning back to Serena. "Tell us about the charity auction. Who attended?" I sat there, my hands clenched beneath the table. I could have purchased the entire gallery they were discussing. I could have employed Serena's CEO as a consultant, but I stayed silent. Why? Why return to this table to be evaluated and found wanting? In therapy, they term it the normalization of disregard. When you're raised where affection is transactional and criticism is the common tongue, you don't identify it as harm. You identify it as family. Your mind makes the pain routine because the alternative, admitting your supposed loved ones hold you in contempt, is too shattering to face. The most perilous element isn't the cruelty. It's the hope. The addictive belief that maybe this time, if I accomplish something massive, if I phrase it perfectly, they will finally see me. That hope is a toxin. It keeps you returning to a source that has been barren your whole life. I nearly shattered that night. I nearly threw my portfolio on the table. But I caught Aunt Alina's gaze. She gave a slight, almost invisible shake of her head. She knew. She knew revealing my position now would only give them a new resource to exploit. They wouldn't be proud. They'd feel entitled. They'd claim my work as their own product. Patience, her eyes communicated. Don't offer your flame until you're ready to let it consume the stage. So I ingested the anger. I ate a green bean. I let Serena critique my posture. I let my mother lament my lack of social ambition. I let them populate their empty lives with their own echoes, oblivious that the quiet woman at the table's end held the key to dismantling their entire set. The chance came 4 months later, delivered in a plain email. Core Node was seeking a creative agency for a new public division. My mergers team gave me 3 candidates. One was Azure Branding. I stared at the name. It felt like destiny or simply economic gravity. Azure was hemorrhaging cash. Their customer satisfaction was in freefall. I ordered a confidential audit through a subsidiary, Atlas Ventures. I needed to see the damage. What we uncovered wasn't just poor management. It was illicit. I was in my office with my lead analyst, reviewing flagged documents. "Here," she indicated, pointing to a transaction chain. Client retainers shifted to general funds, then diverted to a private holding company. And here, proprietary consumer profiles traded to data brokers without disclosure. A chill went through me. Serena wasn't just underperforming, she was misappropriating funds. She was selling confidential information to offset deficits and fund her image. If this became public, it wouldn't mean just business failure. It would mean legal catastrophe. It would obliterate our family's standing. My parents, who had guaranteed loans and sat on the advisory board, would be financially destroyed. They'd lose everything. I leaned back, the city lights twinkling behind me. I had a decision. I could let it collapse. I could watch regulators swarm their offices and see my sister arrested. It would be the ultimate justice. The idol revealed as a counterfeit, the scapegoat watching from her tower. But I thought of Aunt Alina. I thought of the Azure name which my grandfather had built decades prior. I thought of the permanent disgrace. Acquire it, I told my analyst. Rowan, it's a liability sinkhole, she cautioned. The legal exposure is enormous. I understand. Purchase it discreetly. Secure the records, fix the data breach today, compensate the affected clients from my private funds, frame it as an accounting oversight, bury it. Why? She asked. Why protect them? Because I said, signing the directive, I'm not saving them. I'm securing my right to be the one who ends this chapter. I bought the company on a Wednesday. I paid $72.3 million, a premium to guarantee a swift, unquestioned board approval. I owned Azure branding. I own my sister's professional identity. I own the family legacy. And they were completely unaware, which brings us back to that dinner. The silence was palpable. The clinking stopped. $72.3 million is a figure that vacuumed all sound from the room. Serena stared, her fork frozen midway. What? She breathed. My mother chuckled, a tense, broken sound. Rowan, stop joking. Put the phone down. We're honoring your sister. I didn't respond. I reached for my bag and withdrew a slim, black binder. I set it on the table beside the crystal vase Serena had chosen. I opened it. Inside were the finalized acquisition documents. Beside them, a sealed file labeled Internal Review Confidential. I'm not joking, Mom, I said, my tone almost weary. I'm stating a fact. As of this afternoon, Core Node is the parent company of Azure Branding. I own your office, Serena. I own your portfolio. I own your position. My father rose, his neck flushing crimson. This is absurd. You troubleshoot computers. You live in a closet. You don't have that kind of capital. I don't troubleshoot computers, Dad, I said, meeting his stare. I build the operational core that manages logistics for a third of the global top corporations. Core Node is worth over $400 million. I built it while you were busy applauding Serena's participation awards. Serena grabbed the papers. Her eyes darted across the lines, hunting for a trick. There was none. The color drained from her face. You purchased my firm? I did, I confirmed. And now we must address your tenure. I tapped the sealed file. Client loyalty has dropped by half. Revenue is collapsing. And this, I pointed, is evidence of a data breach involving the private records of your top clients. You concealed it. You sold the information to cover operational shortfalls. That's not just poor leadership, Serena. That is actionable misconduct. The room was so still I could hear the refrigerator hum from the kitchen. I acquired Azure to salvage it, I continued. But more critically, I acquired it to salvage this family from federal investigation. I sealed the breach today. I've reimbursed the clients. The incident is contained. You're welcome. Serena seemed to physically diminish. Her confident posture dissolved. Rowan, I did, but I cannot retain you, I stated, closing the binder. You're terminated, effective now. Your separation terms will be couriered. They are fair, more than fair. My father sank into his chair. Rowan, we didn't know. We're proud of you. No, I interrupted. You're not proud, you're astonished. You're impressed by the number, but you don't know me. You never tried. You loved the idea of a successful child. When you believed it was Serena, you celebrated her. Now that it's me, you wish to reposition, but the moment has passed. I looked at Serena. In the end, there's a chasm between having a title and being worthy of one. Serena had all the trappings, but without the external affirmation, she was a hollow structure. I saw the terrifying understanding in her eyes that her entire persona was leased and the contract was just voided. I constructed my own platform, I said, standing. I no longer require a chair at this one. I walked out, leaving the documents behind. The idol was deposed. The scapegoat had become the architect, and the quiet that filled that house was the most powerful symphony I'd ever heard. The following weeks were a whirlwind of transition. I dispatched a team to Azure to oversee the integration. Serena was exited without public spectacle. I kept my word. The legal exposure was neutralized. The clients were satisfied. The family reputation remained intact. I didn't do it for them. I did it because I refused to let their collapse become my legacy. My parents attempted contact. They sent messages about reconciliation and miscommunication. My mother came to my building, trying to persuade the concierge to let her upstairs. I watched on the security monitor as she stood, seeming suddenly small and unfamiliar in a lobby she now realized was beyond her sphere. I instructed staff to politely decline. I didn't sever ties entirely. I simply redefined the relationship. It became acquaintances I'm related to, people who receive a holiday card but who no longer have access to my inner world. I stopped craving their validation. In that act, I reclaimed all my power. They are now footnotes in my origin story, not the editors of my future. Serena relocated to a quieter city. She works in mid-management at a retail corporation. Reports say she's adequate, subdued perhaps. She emails annually on my birthday. I don't respond, but I don't block her. Recently, I launched the Alina Grant, named for the aunt who witnessed me. It funds STEM access for the overlooked students, the quiet minds in the library, the ones who don't conform, the ones assembling realities in silence because the world hasn't made space for them yet. I provide the resources and guidance I had to scavenge for. I visited the Grant's main hub last week. It was alive with energy. Young people programming, debating algorithms, creating. I noticed a boy in the back, focused on his screen, oblivious to the room. He glanced up and our eyes met. He didn't grin. He offered a simple, knowing tilt of his chin, a silent recognition of a shared code. I returned the gesture. They claim success is the finest retaliation. That's not entirely accurate. Success is visible. Success is a metric. What I discovered is superior. Sovereignty. The calm, unwavering certainty that my value isn't dictated by their acknowledgement, but by my own hands. If you've ever had to forge your own path because the main road was closed to you, please hit that like button. Share this with anyone who needs a reminder that their quiet strength is their greatest asset. Thank you for watching.